All right, everyone, let's get started. My name is Angel Starks, and I am the Developer Academy manager here at Spark. And I have the opportunity to lead you in this discussion and conversation today about property management. We are going to have three guests today. And we'll just start with some conversation and what your needs are and my background for the first half hour. And then we will have three separate individuals that have varying experience in property management. And we'll go from there. Now, since we will have about 10 people joining us today, it seems like we have a smaller group, but I do want to cater to what your needs are. So if you have any specific questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can use the function to raise your hand to ask a question, and I will make sure that your question is answered. So we'll get started. Again, my name is Angel Starks. I am the Developer Academy manager. I oversee our programming here for our Developer Academy, which includes not only these deep dives, but also a intensive, in-depth program that our next one is actually our selections committee just met last week, and we're starting to solicit those individuals that have been accepted into the program this year. And we will finalize that in the coming week or so, and with our programming to start in September. With that, it is focused on multifamily or single family, and it goes in depth in contents that we also overview in our deep dives. Is just over a couple of weeks span. So with that, I do want to say who Spark is. Spark is a nonprofit that with the mission of empowering individuals to develop in disinvested areas. So what that means for us is the usually eastern part of Omaha, North and South Omaha, and a lot of infill, and where there needs to be more affordable housing and so forth. But we do service all of Greater Omaha, so individuals can utilize Spark's services for all of their development or any of their development. They just chat with the individuals that oversee our loan program and so forth. So that's just a little bit about Spark. And then again, Spark Developer Academy, really important asset for us. So again, our property management session for today, I was just asking, but I don't see many cameras on. So by the show of hands or maybe responses, how many people actually own property? And I know there was a couple of comments that there was some multifamilies. Yes, I see hands. Yes, that's awesome. And so you might be considering what that looks like for the future of what your developments include. So for future deep dives, we will have our Developer Academy from September 12th through the 30th. Then we will have a deep dive into tax lien certificate process. And then in November 22nd, our building resilient homes. So stay tuned for those and feel free to join us. I do want to thank our partners, NDC and Freddie Mac. NDC provides a lot of our curriculum for our Developer Academy and case studies, and Freddie Mac provides opportunity for us to expand our programming through funding. So I want to make sure we thank both of those partners. Also, we have Wells Fargo, Kiewit, Bank of the West, and US Bank as our 2022 sponsors. For today, this is a very brief outline of how this will go. Starting off with some property management insights and questions. And then we will have Shelby Rebick. She actually owns properties and manages her own. Her husband is a real estate agent, so that gives kind of an inside view. Melisha Potter with MP Dodge. She does residential property management. And then Laura Hanson with Investors Realty does commercial property management. which, since you all are emerging or current developers, you might need these connections in the future, and we will just have a conversation about what services they provide and experiences, how long they've been in the business, and just have a general conversation about them. Does anyone have any questions about what we will cover today? No? Fantastic. So I'm hoping for some feedback and some interaction. Now I know this is being recorded and you'll be able to see this again, but just some tidbits on what is important on why we should consider hiring a property manager. Now, I can say I've been in the real estate business for about 11 years now. And property management has not necessarily been a area that I personally wanted to be in. And it's interesting because the more rentals and so forth that I get involved with, I see the importance of property management, and I applaud the individuals that are able to manage their own properties. But there are great benefits on why a property manager would be advantageous. And the number one is setting the right rental rates, understanding what the market is reflecting. And if there is a property manager that you're working with, they will probably give insights on what the area rental rates are. Because our MLS system tends not to put rentals into the system, it really takes a connection with an individual who is familiar with the market to tell you what you could probably sell your home, or to tell you what you can rent your property out for. And that's on a commercial and or residential basis. Collecting and depositing rents, even though technology is very helpful in this area, there still comes a point where individuals do not use technology, where they need the people to be able to correspond and to relate to, and to have that constant individual that they know they're communicating with when it comes to paying. That also affects your cash flow. You want your deposits, and if you have any late payments and so forth in process, you want someone that knows the protocol enough, because a lot of people who own property just don't do it full time. They want the ability to be hands-off. So that's an opportunity for a property manager. Marketing and advertising. Even though I love Canva and I love social media, there are many other outlets that we need to consider when marketing to individuals and how to market. From a realtor standpoint, I know that there are fair housing laws that I must abide by, especially in marketing. And no matter who is renting their properties, you have to ensure that those laws are also followed. So being aligned with someone that knows the laws and that are required to have continuing education in that area may be very helpful in making sure that marketing and advertising is efficient. Finding the right tenants. Now, again, you can always put a question or a comment in the chat. But if there are individuals that are accepting funding, like Section 8 funding, subsidized funding, ensuring that the right tenants get into your properties as well, or that people fully understanding are communicated to what the expectations are, or what you're providing, and the amenities and accommodations within the properties that you provide, right? Also managing those tenants, understanding how long leases are and so forth. And of course, I'm going through this list. This is just a list that you could possibly find on the internet as well. But these are just topics of reasons why we will want to engage in a property management relationship. Vendor relationships, as our property owners know, just as quickly as things get fixed, things break. So ensuring that you have a connection with vendors that know your property and continue to build that relationship, hopefully will give you maybe some financial benefits in the end as well, because we're constantly making those connections, and having an individual that can be that point person is important. It's imperative. Ensuring that you're in compliance with housing regulations and property laws. I am hopeful that you all are familiar with the landlord regulations that we have here in Omaha, especially with the making sure that all of your residential rentals are registered fully with the city to ensure that all regulations are met, and that you're familiar with the landlord tenant acts and the guidelines for what that includes. Again, having a person that is familiar with all of those is very helpful. It doesn't excuse our property owners, but it does help to decrease the amount of non-compliance that occurs. If we're being honest, and you can chime in on this conversation, of course, but a slumlord is a thing. If it wasn't a thing, then there wouldn't be certain protocol put into place in order to prevent us from being in those situations, but they happen all the time. So property management is not just filling a space, but it's also maintaining it and for the enjoyment and bundle of rights for the individuals that are living or occupying in the space. Enabling you to invest in geographically distant properties. How we just recently did a town hall in conjunction with the North Omaha community of how many out-of-state property owners we have in Omaha, and how individuals lean on their property managers to do all of the other tasks. Well, we saw that possibly as more desire to have ownership here in Omaha, but how does that open up our opportunities to own other properties elsewhere without physically having to be in the space? So it's a great consideration to move towards property management. Also, maximizing the profitability of your time. We all know time is money, okay? You spending time with me today is valuable. So that's why we want to make sure that you get something out of it, because the profitability is there. We have to make sure that every moment that we utilize, we're usually as productive as possible. And if we can delegate some of those tasks to other individuals, that's perfect, right? And maximizing your profitability of your money. If you're able to pay someone a fee to take care of all the laundry list or the long list of things that need to be done in order to keep your tenants happy, your property in shape, then you'll be just, it will free up other opportunities for just that small investment, right? Are there any other reasons that you feel or are interested in hiring a property manager? Or becoming one? Or what consideration that you might have as you continue to develop out or purchase property? Anybody? I love this, that no one. You all came here for a reason. You all came here for some type of reason and interest of property management, so don't be afraid to speak up. That's what we're here
Sure.
for.
I have a question. Is there any like 101 handbook, about, or textbook about this topic, so I can have it as a manual for more understanding how everything. There is tons of nuances, little details in the management, so you should know, because if there are any book you will recommend me or us,
Of course, that's a great question. So I know a lot of real estate schools around will provide a class on specifically real estate management or property management, and go over our Nebraska landlord tenant acts. And there is a book out there that reviews all of it, but it's pretty hefty, right? Because there's some protections that come with ensuring that our tenants and our landlords both understand their expectations and responsibilities. So I can get some resources for you, Roman, and I will send those out with my follow-up to ensure that you're able to, again, educate yourself on the views that you might have on property management and what you need it for. Sound good?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Uh-huh.
And also, can you, I know from this source I can get more information about, property management licensing.
Mhm.
So, just can you briefly give more information which way to go to, learn more about licensing for the property management?
Okay, yes, of course. I will answer that very quickly, and then Willie, I do see your hand up. So in Nebraska, you are able to do property management generally in 3 different ways. The first way is if you own your own property, you can manage all of the property that you have. So you can manage anything that you own. Secondly is a realtor or someone with a real estate background, because in order to accept other people's money, you need to pass it through a trust. So unless you own it or are related to the person that owns it, and then if you are a realtor like I am, then I can do management as long as my broker allows it and I have a trust account that utilizes that I utilize for other people's money because I can't commingle. Or you can be employed by a property management company, and that property management company can give you a salary in order for you to carry out property management duties. Okay. Are there gray areas in all of this? Of course, but those are the 3 main areas. So you don't have to be licensed in order to do property management if you are seeking to manage your own properties. Does that make sense? Is that clear? Cool. Willie, did you have a question?
Thank you.
Yes, I have a question that arises from what you just stated, but I had a comment for the gentleman that was speaking prior to. Before I provide my comment, can you hear me clearly first?
We can.
Okay. Can you elaborate more on the trust aspect that you mentioned? Because this is kind of like new to me from a standpoint of being able to manage other people's properties and retaining a fee for that. I guess I knew that there wasn't necessarily any licensing that you need to have, but from a standpoint of these 3 ways that you kind of described, those are kind of like new to me. I know there's, like you said, the gray area as well, but I didn't realize that I guess there were 3 more distinct routes that I guess are more typical, if you will.
Yeah, most definitely. So a trust account is basically a financial account with the bank with some requirements that prevents you from commingling your personal money with other people's money, because there has to be a track record of their money coming in and out of an account. So in order to prevent that, they usually require a broker's or a broker's trust account in order to continue to utilize other people's money in the correct manner. And for someone like me who hangs their license at a brokerage, my brokerage would have to allow me to be able to do that. Today, we'll actually be interviewing a little bit more with Melisha Potter of MP Dodge and also Laura Hansen with Investors Realty, who both work for property management companies. And that's what sets that apart, because we want to ensure that everyone is protected of who is managing property and who should not be managing property. So every person could be a little different. But we can dig much deeper into what that looks like for you to need certification or requirements in order to manage other people's property that are not your own. Does that help, Willie? Yeah, okay. And excuse me if I say your name
Was
wrong.
muted. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. Does that work?
I mean, yeah, I mean, kind of, I mean, I can find additional information, but more
Yep.
specifically, that trust account, was that
Mhm.
set up primarily with a bank or through like a brokerage? Like, do you have to have a brokerage if you're
It's
messing
a
with other
bank.
people's property? Or is it just so, okay.
Yep, it's a
So you
bank.
don't have to have the brokerage. The brokerage more so kind of like assist or provides another layer of protection, if you will.
I'm gonna look it up momentarily while
Okay,
we have another person chatting.
okay,
But from my experience, in order to do property management, you do have to have a trust account with the broker. Mhm.
okay. And then the follow-up to the gentleman that was speaking before, I
Mhm.
know you're looking for specific textbooks as it relates to property management. You kind of mentioned the legalities and things as it relates to Nebraska. There actually is a handbook
Mhm.
provided by the state of Nebraska that kind of details tenant obligations as well as landlord obligations. And I know
Mhm.
I have a copy of that on my phone, so if I can do it, I can drop it that inside the chat for him. PDF file. It's a couple, I think about 100 so pages, if I recall correctly.
Mhm. Yep, I'm gonna put it in the chat once we get some other folks in here, because then I'll be
Okay.
able to give you some more resources. And I'll, when I send the follow-up for your feedback, I'll attach it as well. So thank you for that. Is it Nadra?
It's Nadra.
No, oh, Nadra.
You're
I
fine. You're
apologize.
perfectly fine. You're good. So I do have a couple questions that I think they might get answered by some of the speakers.
Okay.
My main question is, like, for commercial leases, what's the standard lease term? Because I know
Ooh, good.
for residential, for multi-unit, it's a year lease to start. But for commercial property, it's like, what's the standard for that? Do they typically go 2-year, 3-year, 5-year leasing? And
So,
how do you kind of calculate that, the rate of the lease? How much you would be leasing up space out for?
all great questions, and this is a reason why you would lean on a real estate professional, because they would be able to pull the comps that are required in order to give you a better estimate of what the market is saying for that particular community or space, right? So on the residential side, yes, you're right. Lease is usually about a year, but everything is negotiable. There's a saying in real estate that everything in real estate is negotiable. I can negotiate to stay in a home for 2 years if I want to, right?
Right.
But a
Mhm.
typical is 1 year. Same with commercial real estate. Sometimes it's the numbers that make it work the best. So what is the negotiating point where everyone actually breaks even and or starts to profit from being in the space? So a lot of times a commercial property is actually not in a condition that's prepared for you to utilize. So if there are any improvements or anything paid by the owner to improve, or if you have to take out a loan to improve the building, it really comes down to the numbers to ensure that it's profitable on both sides. So that could mean a 2-year lease, that could mean a 5-year lease. I think Target on 72nd has a 50-year lease,
Wow.
So it really just depends on the property, the location, and the capacity of what they plan to do in the space. So there's a lot of different factors that go in. We will definitely lean into Laura's knowledge on how to navigate through that. But there's also the difference between a broker, the individual that actually brokers the deal, and then the person that manages the leases. So there can be a lot of different areas of interest and or focuses on that as well. But those are both great questions. So keep those in your on your list so that when Laura comes on, we can dig kind of into some of those questions as well. Does that answer?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, I am going to go through this next little slide before we have our first guest join. And Willie, your hand is up. Did you still have a question or?
Oh, sorry, let me lower that.
Oh, that's fine. Just checking in. It's fine. So 7 things to look for when hiring a property manager. One is availability around the clock, right? When you have tenants, things happen all the time. You need any sort of assistance with any emergencies and whatnot. You want someone that will be available. Size and depth, like how many customers and clients do they serve and what knowledge base do they have in order for them to best serve the clients and tenants that you have? And how much do they charge? I mean, what's the value? I can't say that there is a standard of what is asked of anyone, because again, everything in real estate is negotiable. But there might be some typical terms that are figured into calculations to make it worth your while. Also, company experience and reputation, what your community needs are, maintenance expertise, and a dedicated team. So a lot of this you won't know until you go through and do your own research and make sure it aligns with what your needs are. But I do think the individuals today will be able to give some depth and some understanding of things to look for and what they can and cannot do. And these 3 individuals are just a small piece of the pie. There's lots of different people doing lots of different things. And that's why it's up to you to make the decisions what you need to. Okay. All right. It looks like our first guest has joined us. Shelby, do you want to turn on your camera? I'm hoping so. Hi.
Hi, did it work?
Yes, it did. It did work. Thanks for joining us today. We have a small but mighty group, and this will be recorded. So we will send it out to anyone that actually registered for the class. But today we get to have some great interaction and just have a conversation about your experience. And I will stop sharing my screen.
Hi.
Hello, hello. So I will let you, Shelby, introduce yourself, but I will say that today is your birthday.
Yes.
And she decided to share it with us.
Yes.
So for that, we say happy birthday, and we appreciate you just sharing some of the experiences that you have owning real estate. So let's start there. Shelby, you own real estate. How many rentals do you own?
We currently have 4.
4. And are they all in the same area, or can you tell me a little bit about geographically where they are?
2 of them, one of them is in North Omaha. Actually, 2 of them are. One's in North Omaha, then the Florence area, and then the other 2 are in Bellevue.
Mhm. And how long have you owned them?
I would say from now and 4 years.
Mhm. Mhm. And then what made you decide to self-manage all of these?
It started with our first property. My best friend needed out of a situation. So we bought our first rental property to help her get out of it and of the current situation she was in. And then she rented the property for 2 years and then used my husband as her realtor to get her a house. And so for that, we did allow her to break her lease because in the end, it was a win for all parties. So it kind of gave us a reason to start getting more properties just since we had such a good experience with her.
So tell us more about how you set the prices and rental rates for your properties.
I go off the market value and what's going on with the current market. And then you always have to keep in mind and be mindful that, everything every year does go up. So if you want to continue to have your current renters and they're, making payments on time, everything's going well. You take things into consideration on that as well if you have to increase rental prices. But I always say a good aspect of is if you want a good investment portion of it, you should go 10%. So say the house is $100,000 house, you want to at least have 10,000 or $1,000 rent payment towards you.
Now, is there any, you didn't have any experience in property management before?
No, I just read a
No?
lot. I watch a lot of videos. Paul is like probably one of my favorite video person to watch. I've gotten a lot of information from him, and then yeah.
So then are you
Hold on,
like,
I'm on a Zoom call.
so
Sorry.
are you familiar with like the landlord tenant acts and, you know,
Yep.
the guidelines and so forth? How did you educate yourself on those things?
I read a lot of books. Like I said, YouTube videos I've watched. Just knowing what documents, and then plus asking our lawyer too of what proper forms we need to make sure is filled out.
Mhm. So who does your leases?
Like the document filling out, I do,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
I submit them to our lawyer.
Mhm. So a part of your team, even though you manage it yourself, you still have a lawyer look over your documentation to ensure for any other missed liabilities or questions and so forth.
Yep.
That's smart. Mhm.
Yeah.
So you've been doing this for about 4 years now,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure you've had some interesting interactions and so forth.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell of an anonymously, of course, of any experiences that you've had as a self-managed property owner?
I am one that kind of likes to learn the hard way. So you can't always trust everything you think you can trust. So one of my brother's friends from high school needed a place, and he was kind of getting out of a bad situation himself. So we allowed him to rent one of our properties, and I would say that was probably one of the worst experiences I've ever had. Because I didn't think in my heart to do all the background checks like I normally do, because I had known this person for quite some time, and I was hoping I could trust them with everything, because since we had such a good experience with the previous person, I thought it would be a good way to get that person as well back on their feet and everything going good for them. But it actually turned out to be the worst experience. And then he became a squatter. So we had to get the courts involved and our lawyer involved. And we had to do a hard lock to get him out of the house because he wouldn't remove himself. So that was something I never experienced before. And at least I did educate myself a lot better through the process of that. So now I will dot my I's and cross my T's a little harder with that.
Well, because when you own the property yourself, you can let more personal judgment and emotion come in
Yeah.
and not necessarily have that third party view of
Yeah.
saying, because you have that attachment. And so then you see the opportunity to be able to do more with your own property, but you also understand now that you have to go through the same protocol to ensure that you're making a sound judgment, not necessarily the emotional one.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely a question. Nadra, you had a question?
Well, it's not really a question, but in my experience with owning properties and renting them out, me personally, I do not rent to family or anybody that I'm familiar with because of that situation, because people don't tend to take advantage, but when they are really familiar with you, they can. And it's harder for you to do the actions that you would normally do on a tenant that you didn't know, that's somebody that you're just doing this business interaction with rather than family, friends, and things of that nature. So Shelby, you are not the only person that's been there. So I've experienced it something similar as well. So hard lessons learned.
Yes, exactly.
So what I hear is that when you are choosing the route to self-manage your properties, you also have to know yourself enough to do kind of a scope and understanding of what your strengths and weaknesses are in order to know when to lean on other professionals if needed. Because there's more than just the paperwork or the reviewing of the paperwork or collecting of the monies, but it's also the relational value that comes with communication and marketing of what you have to offer.
Right. Yep.
How do you market your rentals?
So the last handful of, or all the other ones have been rented out from the day we put them on the market, and I chose Facebook Marketplace. Well, I first put it on my husband's business page, and then people grab it. So then we just get the applications that come in, and then instead of like broadcasting it kind of thing, we kind of let people versus that we know, but kind of don't know. It's like word of mouth too. And the other 3 properties have been rented from the day my husband got them, fixed and done and everything appropriate for the property. But so we haven't had to market very much, I would say, because the last one we just did was about 2 weeks ago, and I just did Facebook the marketplace, and I think I had 60 people, 80 people reach out, and about 20 applicants actually filled out the application. I kind of did it backwards, where I wanted the application before I let anybody view the property, just because I was screening, but I was still allowing them to come in to the property too. But to me, if you're not going to take the time to fill out for me to get to know you before I let you see the property, then why do I have to waste my time driving there? Because it is 25 minutes from my house. So I kind of did that. And then I just did an open house this time, instead of like, okay, you can come at 3 and now another person can come at 4, you got to value my time as well. So I did it on the weekend. So then it gave people more time instead of like during the day at 10 a.m. kind of thing, where people are working that couldn't make it.
So Shelby, I'm familiar with you. So you don't have to tell your entire life story, but how much time do you devote to managing the properties that you currently have?
It just depends. So like if there's any issues with, like say an air conditioning goes out, then certain things that my husband can't fix or is licensed to fix, we have to call somebody. So I would say, there's months where I just have to collect rent and I don't get bugged. But then there's other months that, like the beginning of summer, all the units of the air conditionings decided they needed Freon. So it wasn't like a hard fix, or like one needed a fuse box fix, but it's still, you have to call that person to get it. So I felt like that month I took a little more time on the properties. But then I think in the end, it's a way that, you can come in and do like a spot check inspection as you're walking through. So, and just, a way to build a relationship with them too. And like, check on them and say hi, because they are people too. So you got to respect their wishes.
I agree. And then do you ever feel like, what would be the point where you would start to be interested in maybe getting a property manager, or do you think your capacity or your goal is to always self-manage your properties?
I would say right now my goal is to always self-manage them and making sure I'm, educating myself on today's market and today's rules. Because if you fail to do that, things could happen to you as your own investment issues as well. So I just think right now we're okay, but who knows what tomorrow could bring too.
Anyone have any other questions for Shelby? Nadra?
So Shelby, I have a quick question. I really like that open house idea. I didn't even think about that. So do you just, all the applicants that have applied that you are wanting to move forward with and show them the property, do you just reach out to them and tell them when the open house is, or is that something that you post out on your marketing material, that what day the open house will be for walkthroughs?
I did both ways. So I did it like the evening before. I kind of changed the description to the open house. I kind of added that in. But for the 3 days prior, I just would email them saying, here's an application, please fill it out. Once I get this submitted, I will give you a date and time when the open house will be. Just
Okay.
because, again, I don't want to waste their time. I don't want to waste my
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
And the previous ones I did only do, I jumped the times of when it worked for them, but then it caused chaos in my life and my children. And I had to find rides for them to get to sports and stuff like that. And,
Right.
I'm still their mom, and mom comes first more than anything. So that's why
Yeah,
I did the
that's
open
good.
house. I thought that was a great idea.
That is a beautiful idea, and I'm going to use that
Yeah.
going forward because
Yeah,
our
totally.
properties are 45 minutes away, and trying to schedule, I would do 30-minute increments. So I'll have 5 people viewing an apartment, and then I'll have to piggyback them all at the same time, and it didn't work.
Well,
But
and during
one open
COVID,
house on a weekend.
I did piggyback them so they wouldn't be exposed, and then I could wipe down some surface areas just to help that. But I feel like right now, you come when you come, and some of them,
Right.
there was a group of 10 people coming in the door at the same time, and it does get a little overwhelming because they'll corner you, and they're I want to get everything done, process. I'm like, I still got to do my reviews on who you are as a person too. So with their
Right.
credit check and the eviction stuff, all that.
Okay. I like it. So I got one more thing, just in
Uh-huh.
case, and I was going to put it in the chat. So for me, because we have multiple rental units, I've found Turbo Tenant. It's a site, it's an online platform where you can have people, you can do your marketing on there, you can manage your properties on there and your
Yep.
maintenance requests, and also have your tenants pay online.
Mm-hmm.
It's helped me, it's made things so much easier for me because they even do the background check for me. I'm
Yep.
like, thank you. I just click a button and I get it back real time. So I just wanted to put that out there for everybody, just in case you
Yeah,
guys
I
were
guess I
looking
forgot
for
to
something.
mention I do use that as well. So, and I
Mhm.
I didn't do that at first, but the last 2 years, that's the one I used. And it's very user friendly too. So
Yeah. Like, I was going to ask you too, how do you like it? Because I've just started using it. So you've been using it for 2 years, you said?
yeah, but like I said, we haven't had a lot of proper people move out of our property,
Okay.
so I haven't had a redo. I guess I don't know if you really should recheck them, but I make them refill out an application every year that they re-sign. So
Okay.
Are
so
there
then
any
I'm up
other,
to date on their jobs and stuff.
Okay. Thank you,
are
Shelby.
there any other
Mhm.
tools or tips that you utilize for resources to kind of help with any of those tasks that you have to do?
No, I do know there's one property. She only likes to pay on cash and she's older. So she makes me come pick it up. So I did write in the thing that I will start charging her, but I just in my heart I haven't charged her. Because I make it like, oh, I have to go that direction anyways. I have another thing going on there. So we kind of work things out.
It goes back to that personal aspect again, right?
Yes, yep, yep,
Those
yep,
things we call feelings and
yep.
emotions and having that connection that sometimes we will subside on certain things. So
Yeah, yeah. She got me on a good day.
oh, that's funny. Thanks, Nadra, for putting that in the chat. I will also make sure to put that in the follow-up notes for us. Shelby, is there anything else that you want to share with us in regards to your experience of being a self-managing property owner?
The only thing I do say is be mindful of people. I know I did say when you first gave me a phone call, some people say rent's due on a Wednesday and they don't get paid till Friday. I know in lease agreements there is a late fee, and sometimes that late fee can push somebody back that whole month. We find it as if they're not constantly doing it. Be mindful of the people as well that are in there, because they could have a huge vet bill, new tires that they had to put on their car, things that as landlords you might not always experience life experiences because you could be a little more ahead of the game than somebody else. So being mindful of other people, and they're trying, and if I feel like if they communicate those things with you a couple days prior, they always say, hey, well, here's the late fee added, but I don't accept it. So it's just one of those things.
Well, you're very nice, and that's awesome. So thank you, Shelby.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Shelby? Well, I hope you enjoy your birthday. I hope
Yes,
you're
thank
doing
you.
something fantastic. And we do appreciate your time with us and going from there.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, guys, too.
Thank you, Shelby. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Now that was awesome because there is a difference in managing your own properties than having someone else manage your properties because there tends to be that personal element, you are one-on-one with these individuals that are your tenants, and you build relationships and you hear their stories and you hear or you see them in your spaces, and then it starts to become really real to you, right? So you're able to provide that personal touch a lot of times, and that's what makes it having that advantage and having that opportunity to self-manage properties, your rental properties. It's just a cool factor that is able to be done, right? So I applaud Shelby, and I'm very excited that she was able to join us for today. So that's really awesome. All right, we are going to continue on. And I have a quote from an agent that I am going to read really quickly. And it's a quick testimony. And it says, managed all my properties on my own for about 15 years. For the last 15 years, I hired a property manager. And then then he continues to say, it saved my marriage. In my opinion, it is worth every penny to have a property manager. I love rental property, great way to build wealth. However, it will leave you jaded. If you think clients lie, they will wait till you are their landlord. And it's actually entertaining. If it is not if you will be sued, it is just a matter of when. Now, not everybody has that experience as a rental or a property owner, as a rental owner. But that was an perspective from someone that has been in the business for a very long time and understanding what goes in and out of the relational transactional part of being owning rentals. And with that, Melisha, can you put your video on?
Oh, it's a little low. Yes. Hi.
Hello, we have our next speaker, or our next guest per se, is Melisha Potter with MP Dodge. And she has been, and we'll go through some questions and so forth, but she is a residential property manager. And I'll let her introduce herself and kind of give some background of who she is and what she does. And then we'll get into some questions.
Yes. So, like you said, my name is Melisha Potter. I'm a realtor and property manager. Has been so for about 8 years now. And I manage about 65 properties. And some of them are single family or single owners. Some of them, the owner owns 10 plus. And I just help them with that whole process of finding a tenant. And then once the tenant's in place, creating a lease, making sure do inspections, maintaining, making sure like maintenance and everything is up to date. And really, I like to say, I make it so that the owners can just sit back and collect a check. They don't have to worry about anything else for the most part. And yeah, that's pretty much my spiel.
Okay, so what qualifies you to be in that position? Like, did you have to have any licensing or anything to be a property manager?
So yes, had to be licensed, get my real estate license. And you have to do the testing, all the requirements for that. And since I manage more than just my own properties, it's required to have a license to manage other people's properties.
Okay. So 65 units, you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them single family, some of them multifamily. What
Yes.
services do you provide? What does a typical day look like for you?
So a typical day for me is so usually 1,000,002 emails. Checking that, whether it's, you know, like owners inquiring about like services that I provide, any kind of maintenance issues, or people that are looking to rent houses, looking to see like what homes are all available, where they need to qualify. A lot of, you know, going out, showing the properties, and like, I forgot her name. Who was the speaker before me?
Shelby?
Shelby. Yeah, like
Mhm.
Shelby said, about having open houses so you're not driving all over the place. That was, yeah, a saver there. In some cases though, you can't help but drive everywhere, especially if you have multiple properties. But a lot in my car. I always say my car is my second office. Going to the different appointments and things like that. But a lot of what I do too is helping people that might not yet know the process, is educating them on what to expect. If they have a house that they want to rent out, like letting them know like what fair market rent would be for the area, what repairs or remodels they would need to do to make it so that it's more appealing to the market. And if they, I'm a huge proponent for Section 8, because I feel like it's kind of gotten bad rep over the years. So I help kind of be the liaison between the program so that people really know, like, it's not just, you know, what people make it seem to be, and how with me I can help make that transaction a little smoother for them, should they come into any obstacles or things, or things to do preventatively to make it so that you don't have to worry about those issues in the first place. So a big part of the day is devoted to education and helping clients, tenants, and homeowners, landlords, with the process of property management.
Awesome. Can you tell me a little bit more about Section 8? I will play the I don't know what you're talking about card so that you can expand on that a little bit.
Yeah. So Listen 8 is a government-funded program that assists people that are either like low income or just in situations where they can't financially, maintain without the assistance. So what they do is people will have a voucher, and that voucher allows them to look for properties, but it has to be in a specific price range for their family size. They go off the fair market rent value. So they get a voucher, they're able to look for houses. And in addition to looking for a house that's within that price range, it also has to hit certain criteria for repair and maintenance. It has to be, safe, basically, is a good generalistic term to use. It has to be safe and habitable, like certain things that are considered to be a hazard, whether fire or whatever. They have a list of things that they want to make sure the house has prior. So that inspection is done. And then as long as when an inspection passes, then the tenants can move in, and then they will get like their voucher, they call it voucher, is a subsidy in rent. So the housing authority will pay a portion, and then the tenant may pay a portion as well. And so every month you just deal with that. And then throughout the year, there's an inspection to make sure that not only is the tenant keeping up with the property, but the owner as well. Anything that's owner responsible, that they're maintaining that as well.
So that sounds like a lot. And you take care of all the documentation for that, or is that on your the property owner?
I handle all of that. I make sure to keep the property owner informed on the different requirements and things. But like I said earlier, I try to make it so that it's as much hands off as possible. Some owners, I do have some owners that like to be very involved in the process, and I, cater to that as well. But a majority of them is just like, send me a check, make sure the house isn't on fire, I'm good. So it's kind of like, where, have it your way, however you like it. But for the most part, though, I handle all of the paperwork, handle all of the maintenance, making sure everything is right so that when the inspection comes, we can get a pass and we're moving on.
So 2 questions. That does sound like a lot of tedious work. Do you do all of that yourself, or do you have a team? And then how do you get compensated?
Yes, so I do have a team. It involves different contractors like general handymen and women, electricians, plumbers, HVAC, like you name it, I've got it. So, and I also have an assistant, he's here as well. And he helps handle phone calls and things like that in regards to maintenance issues or just inquiries that come in. So how I get paid is based off of the rent, whatever we find is fair market rent, or I always have the owners, because some of them have like a number that they're looking for to get. So whatever we end up deciding what the rent amount is, my fees is 10% of that rent amount. And then that's for the management. For leasing, it's one time 50% of the first month's rent. So that includes marketing the property for rent, doing the showings, creating that initial lease, doing the move-in inspections and walkthrough with the tenant, all that. That's the one-time 50%, and then after that, it's 10% thereafter.
But if you don't do any of that extra stuff, then it's just your 10% monthly.
Yeah, 10% monthly, and then that includes collecting the rent from the tenant, doing the making kind of maintenance. We have like a portal for the tenants to pay their rent, to submit their maintenance request. It pays, that is all included for that. The owners also have a portal where you get your financials, see when rents are paid. At the end of the year, when you do taxes, it has everything itemized so that all of your expenses per property, because like I said, some of my owners have multiple properties. It'll like basically filter it out and make it so that you have an itemized report that you can give to your tax person, and then it's just done. But yeah, that 10% includes that. It also includes just like education to the tenants, because a lot of times people that are renting houses don't really know, like, oh, I'm supposed to change my furnace filter. I don't know what a furnace is. Like, where's the, so it also includes that, because I feel like if people have a better understanding of how it is to run a home, they'll take better care of it. Sometimes it's just a matter of them not knowing. So periodically send out different informationals, newsletters, and things like that to the tenants. I also offer services of doing inspections on the property in addition to that additional move-in and a move-out. Sometimes you get an annual, maybe biannual, 2 times a year inspection on the property, just to make sure that they're maintaining it in a good way. They're not, trashing it or doing inappropriate things in the house, or having like their friends move in and it's no longer them anymore, it's someone else, or there's all kind. There's a lot of stories. So, but yeah, that's pretty much what that all includes.
I have several other questions, but I did want to give the opportunity for any of our attendees to ask questions. If you have a question for Melisha, please feel free to raise your hand or chime in. But as individuals are pondering that, or the information that you've provided thus far, let's talk money. You say that you collect people's rents and security deposits. Where does that go?
So that goes into our trust accounts here at MP Dodge, and it's separated. So the security deposits in a separate account than the operating income is what we call it. And so it's saved, and that way we have auditors that come in to make sure that the money's properly handled, so there's no like mismanaging of funds or anything like that. We have a third party that we have to answer to make sure that everything checks and balances on everything.
Awesome. And then how many years have you been doing this?
It's about 8.
Okay, so within those 8 years, I'm sure that there's been some experiences or some interactions. Is there anything, without giving too much confidential information and so forth, that you've encountered that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, so I've had owners, a lot of people like to do it themselves, and I understand why. You know, like, hey, sometimes it might seem like, oh, they're not doing anything. It's just, I could do it myself, you know, type of thing. And honestly, I would say a majority of my clients are ones that started that way. And then was like, you know what, it's not as easy as I thought. But one particular one, he owned the property and he was just renting it to his sister. So he was like, oh, you know, it's my sister, I should be good. I don't need a property manager. But of course, family members are the ones that are probably notorious to be the ones that give you the most issues. But yeah, so it was a bad thing. He hired me and was like, you know what? I just don't want to deal with it anymore. I'm too nice. And we talked earlier, somebody was talking about being nice. And I feel like tenants hear that and see that, and it's like ants to sugar. Oh, you're nice. Let's see what I can do. So I end up being that firm person that says, hey, I'm involved now, and this is the standards, and this is what we're expecting from you. This is what you can expect from me. If you're not doing this, then these are the consequences. And just straight out tell them, like, you know, it's not a personal thing, but it's the law. You signed a lease saying that you'll pay the rent by the 1st of every month. It is now the 6th. We haven't had the rent. We're filing for an eviction. And if you're not familiar with the process of an eviction, I can explain that to you, you know, and it starts, you know, getting them like, oh, okay, well, let me pay. Or, you know, a lot of owners, they'll start off and they're like, oh, I'll pay you on the, you know, the 7th, I'll pay half here, the other half this time. And then the owner's like, okay, works. And they don't do it. And then before you know it, it's been 2 months and they haven't paid anything. So that's when usually I jump in and like get them right. But yeah, in this situation, it was his sister and she wasn't paying the rent. You know, we ended up helping her find some programs that help pay the rent, but still, even with the assistance, you know, they only helped for so much. She still couldn't maintain it. The house wasn't taking care of the house. Kids jumping on the sink, cracked the vanity in the bathroom. It's just not really taking respect for the house. So in that situation, she was very close to the eviction, but she left amicably. But it's something where he wouldn't have been able to get her out. Like, you know, it's one of those things where
Yeah, because it's not you talking to your sister.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And so that actually, like, that happens a lot, where it might not be a sister, it might be like a cousin or maybe even a friend. I have another one actually right now, where it's his friend. He's like, you know, I was like, you know, I really think we should check credit. We should check rental history. We need to check all these things to make sure this person is a good fit. And he was like, it's my friend. I know her. We go back. I just want to rent it to her. I don't want to do like a credit check on her or background check or anything. Let's just put her in. And that was, I want to say like March of this year. And she hasn't paid rent on time yet. And we're almost in September. So it's just one of those things where, I mean, friends and family, I mean, you want to help them out, but I would say if you're wanting to help them out, it's good to have a third person in there, like a neutral party where you can just be like, oh, MP Dodge is, you know, Melissa's the property manager. I can't really get into that, whatever she says is what it is, type of thing.
So
Even
it
though
separates
ultimate,
the emotions and the business.
exactly.
It provides an opportunity to say, this is more of the business protocol and not necessarily me personally attacking you for the rent that you agreed to pay.
Exactly. You got
Gotcha.
it.
Willie, it looks like you have a question.
Unmuted. Yeah, I just wanted to ask for clarification. I know when you were referring to repairs and things of that nature, were you saying that the property management company typically pays for those things? I know it probably depends on what those particular repairs are, but could you provide some clarification on that?
So yeah, the repairs, so like you're saying, like for example, like if a toilet breaks or
Right, you got to replace the the toilet bowl, or you got to replace the vanity, for instance, that you mentioned was broken.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for that? Is that coming out the landlord, or is that coming from the property management? I'm assuming things, for instance, as they get more expensive, let's say the air conditioner, that's something that adds value to the property. So that's I would think the landlord is paying for that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, so what we do, and it's all kind of spelled out on the lease, but anything that is tenant liable, like tenant responsibility, and
Okay.
it breaks, they're responsible for it. So for example, like of course, in that situation where the kid was jumping on the sink, the tenant's responsible for that repair. But for example, if the toilet stops working because there's a cracked pipe or something, something that the tenant didn't do, then the owner would be responsible for it.
Okay.
So I hear you saying, Alicia, that at no time is the property management company and or representative financially responsible for fixing anything that deals with the property.
Correct.
So it's either the responsibility of the tenant or the landlord, not the in-between.
Right. And what I do is facilitate the scheduling of that. So, but the ultimate who pays it is usually the owner. And then if it's something where the tenant responsible, they either reimburse the owner for that payment or can pay for it directly.
And then a follow-up question. You had mentioned that you have your team of contractors, et cetera. Let's say there's a hole in the wall or whatever, right? And you, from a standpoint of any business owner, they're always looking at their margins and trying to reduce costs and expenses, right? Do you guys have like a pre-negotiated cost for, let's say, how much it's going to cost to hang up a sheet of drywall, or is it like, okay, I've got 3 contractors that I work with, let's get 3 bids from them, or
Yeah, no, good question. So it's really up to the owner. So I do have a team, and I have, and by having this team and giving constant business, they have like a payments and fees that are already pretty competitive, and if not highly discounted, because they know the amount of business is getting sent their way. But if an owner wants me to get like quotes, get 3 quotes before you do, and let me see them, and then I'll make a decision, I can do that. Typically though, what some owners will do is, if it's under, let's say, $200 to fix it, just fix it. Like, not go ahead and knock it out. If it's higher, then get me a couple of bids, or usually if it's like a unique thing, like maybe like remodeling the basement or something, or then it'll be more of a getting more bids. Or if it's something where it's like pretty standard, like when the tenant moves out, we need to paint everything and get it ready for a new tenant, that's pretty standard. So it might just be one where they're like, go ahead and do it.
Okay.
Great questions. Now, I'm assuming because you have been doing this for 8 years, that you have a checklist of certain things that you go through, or for each property. How do you keep yourself organized? I mean, 65 properties is not a small feat.
Yeah. So we have software. So we use Appfolio, and that helps keep all of our documents, to financials, a lot of the tenants to pay online. That helps out a lot. We also
That's
have,
Appfolio. Okay.
yep, APPFOLIO. And yeah, that helps keep things pretty organized. Like I said, my assistant helps out a ton. Having someone else there to answer phone calls and do that part. We use Gmail, shared drives. The community shared calendars help out a lot as well for appointments and things. And then automated alerts, so like when tenants move out, or like their lease is coming up, it'll let us know like, hey, this lease is about to expire in a couple months, are they gonna, send out the renewal or whatever, prep the house for a new tenant or something like that.
Nice, wonderful. Okay. Before I ask the next question, anyone else have any questions? So how do people get in touch with you to be able to employ you or to get your services? And what does that process look like for you?
So I can, I don't know if you share it or not, or I can put it in the chat, but my phone number, I can give you guys that, email, and I'm pretty available. Texting is a good way to get a hold of me. It's probably the best way, but yeah, if you had any cars, it's really just a matter of just reaching out, and we can set up a time or even a phone call to talk about how I can help.
Awesome. Awesome. Is there anything else that you want to share? Why did you get into property management?
That's actually a pretty common question I get, because most people are like, why would you do this? So really it comes down to, I wanted to help people prepare for home ownership. And I feel like a lot of people they start off as tenants first. And in order to better serve them and help prepare them for that transition is to basically be an advocate for them and how to help them with what it would take to become a homeowner. So also I knew I wanted to, be in getting into investing and owning my own rental property. And it was like, hey, this is just practice for when I do it type of thing. So, which it definitely was. And I was able to get some properties as well. And yeah, it was really just though to help other people. It just seems like an underserved market, and I wanted to help them out.
Makes complete sense. We actually have a question from Roman. Is there any typical contracts between owners and property managers?
Yes. So that would be the management contract, property management contract. And it just spells out like what my fees are, my expectations from what your expectations for me is and mine for you. And it'll spell out, usually it's like a year long, it could be longer, 2 years. And it's really just draws out expectations.
Does that answer your question, Roman? Cool. So have you adapted your contract? And then also, do you draft the leases as well?
Yes, I do draft the leases. And then what was that first question?
Have you changed your property manager owner contract since over the years? Because when I think of typical, I say like, okay, I Google property management contract and then I just copy and paste, but they're very generic. It might not have pieces in there that should be in there. And only the people that register for this deep dive should know that this paragraph is just as important as any other part of the contract. Have you added anything in your contracts that reflect that?
Yes. So one thing I've added is spelling it out before we even put the house on the market, if they're going to allow pets, if they're going to allow Section 8, if there's anything in the property that they like doesn't stay. Like for example, like a refrigerator or washer and dryer or whatever. There's so that there's no assumption that, oh wait, I didn't know that was included. We definitely spell that out. And then also like how frequently inspections are done. I am pretty I guess adaptable, or can bend on things when if it's a tenant that they end up realizing that they need to do more frequently or less frequently, then I can obviously adjust for that. But I think the biggest thing is just spelling out what's included for the lease before the lease is even drafted. Like, hey, I want to make sure the tenant knows I'm handling the yard care, because I don't want them messing up my azaleas that I have over here, or something to that effect. Like, yeah.
What would make you say no to an owner?
So that is a great question. So there's two red flags that I will deny an owner for. One is if the house is in a condition where it's inhabitable, and they want me to just do it, type of thing, where I needed the owner to have like skin in the game and have some accountability for the property, because ultimately it's not my property. Yeah, I have to see that you're vested in it. But if I see like an owner is like that property is just like torn down, like just I'll tell them, get it to a position when you're ready, like it's ready for like say a tenant, when you just have like maybe a couple of questions, like, oh, should I paint this wall blue or white, that type of thing. And then versus me just doing it, because I had that before, and it's a lot. And then the other thing is if there's a tenant in place and they are not taking care of the tenant, like if they're like quote unquote slumlords, I don't like to be involved in situations like that either. So because ultimately it can make me look bad, and people, as soon as you say oh, it's managed by MP Dodge, by Alicia Potter, then I now am associated with that property. So I'm going to need the owner to have a certain level of accountability on the property as well, because, and vice versa. Like I would think the owner would, when you hear my name, hopefully it's associated with like, oh, okay, so I'll rent that house because I know Melicia's the manager on that, and that she'll take care of us, and that type of thing. So.
Oh, those are two very good reasons why.
Yeah.
I mean, your reputation is on hand. And then again, if you're working directly with the individuals, that relationship and that desire to keep a good relationship as a third party is important. So I definitely can respect both of those reasons not to work with someone.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody else have any other questions for Alicia?
I have a question. What is the average market, property management fees looks like? Is there like specific percentage, or just flat rates, or how it works?
Yeah. It's usually just the 10% to manage it if there's already a tenant in place. If there's not a tenant in place, and you need me to help you find it, it's a 50% of the rent leasing fee, and that is whatever the rent amount is 50%, and then 10% for management thereafter.
Now, I did tell them everything is negotiable in real estate.
Yeah.
So things tend to change. So there's no guideline that says you have to do this. It could be more or less. We cannot set certain perimeters, but everything's negotiable in real estate. So Roman, you could charge a flat fee if you wanted to. You could do a percentage if you wanted to. As the business owner and or licensed property manager, you have the ability to make those decisions on your own. The market will either tell you yes or no.
Exactly.
And then that's how you know if you're
If you're right.
positioned well.
Right.
Does that answer your question, Roman?
Yes,
Perfect.
thank you. Thank
Willie, you have another question?
Yep, last question. So are you like an independent property manager?
Yeah, I'm a,
I got muted in between my question. I don't know. You muting me over there? No, so are you an independent property manager that's kind of like, backed by NP Dodge, if you will, or brokerage through NP Dodge, and you pay your brokerage house a fee or a commission, if you will, each year in order to be kind of like backed by them and have their resources, if you will?
exactly. Yep. That is it.
Okay, so the 10% essentially goes to you, and then you just pay your brokerage house.
Well, technically it goes to NP Dodge and then they pay me. But yeah,
Okay.
It's basically the same. It's basically the same thing. But yeah, they
Gotcha.
get it. NP Dodge gets the cut.
Okay.
So to clarify that question or that answer is when you become a licensed realtor, you and your broker, wherever you hang your license, become automatic partners. So then the broker is the actual person that the company that has the trust account and so forth. And then you share those responsibilities. So you and your broker become one. And so then the money actually funnels through the broker if you hang your license with someone, and then they pay out from what they receive. If you're your own brokerage, then you would just be responsible for overseeing that money management. So just to clarify on that, when you get your Nebraska license, your realtor's license, you hang your license somewhere unless you are your own broker. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you had another question or, oh, nope, hands down. Awesome, great questions, great questions. Well, Melisha, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so I guess I've got questions for you guys. So you guys are in the process of becoming developers? Is that right?
So anyone here, it's open to the public, but the individuals that are mostly on this call are looking to either, they already own property and or looking to learn how to own more property in order to either do a single family housing development and or multifamily commercial leasing.
Gotcha.
Not that I have to speak for any of you, but that's kind of the platform.
Yeah, so I'm just curious to what your guys' experience so far has been with the properties that you guys have now, and with like managing those, if anybody has any.
Well, this is my first time managing property. It's been quite interesting and very time consuming, but I like it. It's been, my husband and I owned single family houses before in the Omaha area, and we kind of got away from that. So now we do, we have multi-family property that we rent out right now. And there is a complete difference on the revenue stream and how the processes work for multifamily compared to single family.
Are you saying like maybe like duplexes or more like apartments? Like
we have an apartment complex and multiple duplexes. We're out in Nebraska City and Council Bluffs right now. Nice.
Mm-hmm. Is that what you do full time, or are you managing another career?
Yeah, so I'm splitting my time. So we own a contracting business, and I think that's what kind of helps us out a little bit with maintenance requests and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. So we have a construction company. We do a general contracting, remodeling, home builds, things of that nature for our construction business. And then we have our investment business where we own the real estate.
Oh, okay.
So
Nice.
we're pretty busy. Well, I'm pretty busy because I'm dealing with all the leases and move-ins and
Yeah.
showings and things of that nature.
Oh, that's cool. And then
So
he handles the other, the contracting side.
Yep.
That's
So we're
cool.
busy, but
Yeah.
it's really, there is a difference. I am learning a lot. I'm happy I got on the call because I got a couple of good things that I want to follow up on in regard to showing property and just I didn't know we had to register with the city for a rental property. So definitely we'll get on that and make sure that we're registered. I'm sure we are because it's a multi-unit. And when we took over, I think we just probably need to update our information.
Yeah.
Lily, did you have a question?
No, I was going to clarify. I think Ms. Davis, what you're referring to as far as registration, I think right now that's just for the city of Omaha, if I recall correctly, based on the ordinance that was passed, I want to say the past year or two. So if you're in Nebraska City and Council Bluffs, it doesn't really relate to you.
Okay. Yeah, and we're registered. I know Council Bluffs, that we have to register there too, but we're already on top of that one. That was the first time I ever heard about registering a rental property, was when we got our property in Council Bluffs. They literally give you a sticker that you put on the door or somewhere in the unit that it's been inspected and you're registered.
Thanks. Thank you for that clarification, Willie. But yes, he is absolutely correct. It's Omaha area specifically, and Council Bluffs sounds like it. Do you serve Iowa, Alicia?
Effective September 1st, I will be.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time, taking time with us to
Yeah.
answer all of our questions. I will send out your information to everyone that registered for the class. And if there's any other things that you want to add, otherwise feel free to stick around, or you can claim some of your time back.
All right. Well, you guys have a good one.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
So speaking with Militia, you see the difference from self-managing versus having someone else do it, and some of the implications and pros and cons, right? Not you get an opportunity to have a buffer between you and your tenants, but then also any of the other resources that she kind of talked about, and things that she knows that maybe you don't necessarily know as a property owner, or some protocol and or list to have, right? Or what benefit we're bringing to our clients as property owners. So she focuses primarily just on the residential, and with 65 units, that's fantastic. Sounds like she has the capacity to add more. So that's super exciting for her. And very grateful. With that, we are now going to change into our commercial lens. And Laura, I apologize for all the other links. I'm sorry. I have
We made it work. It's okay.
So thank you so much for joining us. Laura works with Investors Realty, and she is, I'll let you tell some of your bio, but focuses primarily on commercial property management. So we'll just jump in, Laura, because I know some of our attendees have some specific questions around commercial property. And what do you do? How long have you been there? I'll just kind of ask questions to clarify as we move forward.
Perfect. Thanks for having me and sending me the link. So I'm Laura Hanson. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Investors Realty. We are an Omaha firm, born here, staying here, and Omaha people that love our city. And we focus on commercial real estate. We have a lot of divisions within our company. We have a brokerage division that handles sales transactions, buying property, selling property, leasing property, and so on and so forth. We have a property management division that manages over 181 buildings, or 6.5 million square feet of commercial real estate, going from industrial to office to retail to flex, all of those things, and a team that handles all of that with accounting and maintenance and just a big group of folks that make that, from a third party perspective, can come in and take care of everything that an owner needs to care for at a property. Tenants, collecting rent, making sure that projects are done, budgets are met, mortgages are paid, taxes are paid, all of those things. We also have a facilities division that handles everything except the accounting piece for owners. There's a lot of big firms that have offices elsewhere in the country, and so they do their own level of accounting, and our facilities team is their boots on the ground approach to taking care of things for the tenant, managing projects, like concrete, asphalt, roof stuff. And then we have a project management division that, again, for an owner, can go in, and if an owner says, oh, I have a tenant improvement, I need a building gutted, we need these plans done, our project management team rolls in and takes care of that for them. So kind of we cover every corner from a commercial perspective.
Whew, that was a lot.
Sorry.
That's okay. How many employees do you have, or independent people that work underneath Investors Realty?
So we have 64 folks here. 22 of those are independent brokers. All of our brokers are independent contractors, but we love them, and so we consider them part of our team as well. The rest is made up of executive team, support staff, property managers, and accounting team, and maintenance.
And you only focus on commercial?
True story. Yes.
Okay. So I know we've had some questions, Nadra, I know specifically you've had some different questions, and a lot of them are around the idea of typical terms. And you mentioned an acronym, TI. Can you tell everyone else what that might mean or what that would entail?
So our brokerage team is talking about TIs a lot. TI stands for tenant improvements. In many circumstances, you see it written as the acronym TIA for tenant improvement allowance. And that kind of explains it a little bit more. When a tenant looks at a space and is working with our broker, or any broker for that matter, they're looking at the space, and a lot of times it can be very scary, because how am I going to walk into this weird looking shell of a space and then have my business tomorrow? And so part of that negotiation involves, well, what is the owner of this building going to give me to get this space up and running so I can start doing my business from here? I would say 90% of the time, it's probably not the full amount of what they need to get the space up to, business operations, but it's going to get them most of the way. And an owner wants you to do that because they want you to invest money in that building. And so they're investing their own money in that building to help you be successful, help a tenant be successful. And so it's part of the negotiation process when those managed buildings come over to a property manager. That property manager is helping to manage that TI allowance, because a tenant is saying, okay, I spent $50,000. I want my refund. I want my money. And so the property manager has to say, wonderful, I'm thrilled that you spent the funds that were allotted to you. I need receipts, I need lien waivers, and all the things to show me that you actually spent it on what you are supposed to. Because you don't want a tenant to not spend the money on the building and buy product that they're just going to sell. There are terms of how they're going to use those dollars. And so the property manager is then vetting, okay, do I have lien waivers? Because I certainly don't want a vendor to come back and lien the building later because they haven't been paid. receipts, everything showing that all of those funds were actually utilized in the building. And then it moves through the accounting process for approvals, and then the tenant gets their funds.
Whew. So there's a lot more to commercial, as you can see. Because I have learned in my experiences of showcasing commercial properties is that people come in with a dream, whereas in residential, they come in to live and to abide in a house. And they're thinking about where they're putting couches and TVs, whereas in a commercial space, you can walk in and it can be completely have an office, but with the commercial space, you have the ability to change that into what you need it to be, depending on what the current circumstance is. And so Nadra's question, one of her questions was towards how long of leases do you require? And how do you determine how long a person should stay within a lease for a commercial property?
That is going to be different for every single building owner. We've worked with building owners that had people on a 12-month lease, which is really annoying in the commercial world because you're working on that every 12 months. And you have some that are 5-year leases with some extra options on there. So towards the end of the lease, they might be able to exercise an additional 5 years or an additional 3 years. You used to see a lot of 10-year leases. It's not really a popular thing anymore. Longer term leases are more on like ground leases or like a big building, like a Costco would rent ground. And they want to rent that for a long time. So that would be a long lease. But your typical retail, even office anymore, is closer to like a 5 to 7 year deal with some options out there.
Now,
But it's different every time.
yeah. Well, and that can be tricky, right? Because some individuals are starting new businesses and they don't know if they're going to make it to the 5 to 7 year mark. How do individuals or tenants or potential tenants kind of protect themselves or to calculate how their profitability in their budget to be able to maintain these leases? Do you have any tidbits or thoughts on how that is completed?
So the brokers will work with them to try and understand if it's a viable business. If I, Laura Hansen, decide that I do okay cutting hair and might do that on the side on a weekend, like they're going to look at that business plan and be like, that's not her day job. Like she can't just, I've seen her hair. She can't cut hair on the weekend. This isn't going to work. Like they'll help have that conversation with people. And they're also, they're pretty ingrained in what's going on in the community. And so they know like if someone that wants to come and cut hair, they're known a little bit more in that circle. And so they'll be like, oh yeah, you were over here and now you're breaking off to go by yourself. Okay. So, you know, what's your client book look like? Do you have a business already? And so they help walk them through that because the broker needs to then be able to turn to the owner that they're working for and say, yes, I have someone that wants to do a lease. They're a viable business. This is why they're a viable business. Sometimes they're not because they're brand new. And so if they're brand new, sometimes you look at like, is this a franchise? Well, how good is the franchise? Well, if it's a crumble cookie franchise, everyone wants to eat a cookie. And so, yeah, okay, that's going to be awesome. Go for it. If it's not a known one, there's different dialogue going in, maybe a different security deposit. Maybe an owner is going to give them an out after seeing longevity, if it's going to work. Most of the times they're going to ask for a personal guarantee of some sort. That personal guarantee tells the owner, okay, if Sally's haircutting place doesn't go off the ground here, Sally's still going to make good on the rent she owes me. And so it's difficult, but they do their best to try and vet, good clients.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Nadra, did I do your question justice? Did you have anything in addition to that?
Yeah, I just had one more question. So for me, I think my question also is for the commercial lease rates, how do you calculate or around, besides trying to see what the commercial lease rate is in the area that your property's in? How do you get that rate? Is it based off of square footage or?
So a lot of times the brokers are going to run comps just like you would in residential. You'd run all your comps for whatever zip code or area, and size is key. So if someone's wanting a price on a bay that's only 2,000 square feet, they're not going to look at, a 25,000 square foot office because that doesn't align. So they'll run their comps, but then they'll also look at how expenses are paid in a building. In a commercial setting, you have usually one of two ways expenses are paid. You either have a gross lease, which means everything that the building needs, utilities, real estate taxes, everything is lumped into $1 per square foot. And out the door, that's what you pay every month forever until that lease is over. Then you have some that are triple net leases. And so a triple net lease has these common area maintenance charges that are billed every single month to those tenants based off of their proportionate share. And that's going to be a different amount per square foot. So in some cases, if your rent is $12 a foot, you might have $6 a foot triple nets. And so for a tenant, they need to understand that that's actually $16 a foot, but rent only is 10. But the expenses that come through with it are another 6. And so there's a lot to understand there. And from the brokerage seat, they're educating their clients on that at the same time, because not everyone has done this before. If you're just like a small business, you don't know what it is. And so our team likes to help them understand what they're getting, where the value is before they, get them down the road in a deal.
I had a question follow up to that. So do the owners have to provide proof that what the triple net fees are? Like if expenses are $6 per square foot, do they show proof that is it?
Absolutely. That's our job as a third-party management company is to do that for every single building where we do triple nets on. And so after the year completes itself, so as soon as December 31st comes and goes, our accounting team is running all those numbers from that year prior, and they're doing a reconciliation of that account to say, okay, we budgeted for $6 a foot. It came in at $7. So we're going to have to bill people that differential, or sometimes they get a credit depending on whether or not expenses were what they were anticipated to be. That's usually the first quarter of the year that they're working on those.
Okay, that's good to know.
And each lease would identify that too. Like a lease should definitely identify if there's a true up to those estimated amounts.
And so then I guess this kind of leads up to my second question. So if you're managing a property, you're doing that for the owner so much. So like for example, let's say I'm renting out a restaurant and it's a triple net lease, and I wanted to make sure I had those numbers and things like that. You're in contact with me to say like, hey, here's the financials and things like that.
Yes, 9.9 times out of 10, a tenant on a building that we manage never interacts with the owner by design. It is designed for us to be the middleman for that owner, because the owner lives somewhere else or has a different, another job during the day, and doesn't want to be involved in those often difficult conversations. But our team will come with that reconciliation and say, this is what we said it would be, this is what it is, and here's all the backup, like invoices, Excel spreadsheets for days of how the numbers became real.
Gotcha.
So transparency is key.
Yeah, for sure. And then what are the fees for that?
So
Like
for an owner, our fees are lumped in depending on what their portfolio looks like. It's usually a percentage based off of what the income is at the site.
So whatever the tenant, like if I was a tenant, whatever my gross income is, your percentage is based off of that or off of what the rent is for the building?
The rent, because your gross income, you want to keep a lot of that as a
Yeah.
tenant. And
Mhm.
so you're paying rent. And so it's a percentage of the rent you're paying.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And what is that typically? Like 3%, 2%, 10%?
It really depends. I'd say it varies, especially from a facilities perspective. When you lump that in there, it could be anywhere from 2.5 to 5.5. It really depends. We work hard to look at each situation individually and decide like, oh, this one will be easy. There's no grass to worry about. Or you know, maybe this one has a tenant that handles everything themselves, so we don't have to worry about snow removal. So a lot of that dialogue's going on in the beginning when I'm working with an owner and they're and we're looking to secure that business.
Again, we've said that everything in real estate is negotiable.
Yes.
It starts with a conversation and it ends with the conversation and probably followed up by another conversation. So lots of communication that happens. Does that
Yes.
answer all your questions, Melisha?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Nadra, you had another question?
Yeah, I think it's a two-parter. So for a gross lease, you're saying that everything's included with that lease. So they get the utilities, they get the maintenance, they get the snow removal, lawn service, and if there's any landscaping, that's taken care of as well. That's all included in one price for the lease.
Yes.
Correct. Now, so do we calculate that into the cost per square foot? And is that when you were saying that you need to have the receipts and the tracking for that, or is that triple net where we got to do all that?
So you
receipts
don't,
backing up?
okay, this is a very good question. It is very complicated. So tell me if I'm overcomplicating it with my answer. So it's important to always understand from an ownership perspective where your expenses are trending, especially if you have gross leases, because you want to make sure your gross leases are including all of what those expenses should be. So even if there isn't a situation, and if you have a tried and true gross lease situation, there's no need to reconcile for the tenants because there's nothing to get more of or give back. But it's good for the ownership to understand where those expenses are. And, you know, for budget reasons, so on and so forth. And so when we do that, there wouldn't be anything to share with the tenants.
Okay. Yeah, because I like that gross lease option. Seems a lot easier.
Yes, it is a lot easier. The times in which that can come back to like sneak up on someone is when because you can only average so much of those expenses into that gross lease number. And so once you get to a year where like, oh shoot, I've only averaged $10,000 a year in asphalt. This year I need 50. Well, that comes out of the owner's pocket because you can't get that from your tenants. And so that's where a triple net lease gives you value, because then you'd get that extra 50 from the tenants. And it wouldn't come from your pocket as an owner.
So it's
So how does
basically to cover overages and maintenance
Right.
of common areas.
Yeah.
So it's not like if all the air conditioner unit goes out for the whole commercial property and you have to fit that bill if we do a gross lease because we didn't include it into it.
Not
Correct.
necessarily.
Yeah, like every lease is going to be very different, especially as it addresses HVAC. But say a gross lease is typical in a large office building, I would say in general circumstances. And so an office building traditionally, also not every circumstance, but they'll have boilers. Well, a tenant's not going to pay for the boiler. That's a capital expense. That's always every day, all day, triple net or gross, whatever is always going to come out of the owner's pocket. But if there's like a compressor, yeah, you could put that in CAM. You could put that back in all of those triple net numbers.
And I do
And I
want to
guess-
highlight what you said, Laura, that HVAC is actually something that's negotiated in each individual lease.
Yeah.
So it could be in a particular bay that you are responsible for the air conditioning and furnace maintenance on your own.
Yeah.
And if something happens to that unit, you as the tenant is actually responsible for all the costs. So again, that's all separated depending on what that lease looks like and what is signed off. So understanding the lease to any situation is very important.
And what we have a hard time with is tenants signing leases and not reading them. And then the HVAC breaks and needs replacement. Well, there are terms that have had to have been met in order to have the owner replace that HVAC. And tenant would have had to have a preventative maintenance program on the HVAC in order to have the owner pay for the replacement when it, goes kaput. And so half the time, maybe even more than half, it comes to, okay, well, great, your unit broke. Let's get a copy of that preventative maintenance contract so we can show the owner that you've been doing your work and taking care of it. And they're like, what are you talking about? Really got to read your lease. And so a lot of times that's where it's tough. And so our team is working with the owner to say, like, can you go halvesies with them? Like, can we do something? Because it's tough. So read leases, make sure.
And that's the hard part of between residential and commercial is commercial has completely different terms and what is usually negotiated and included versus a residential.
Right.
So you
So,
want
and
to
that-
ensure it's very piecemeal together for each tenant.
Okay, and that
Yes.
was what I was getting at too, because I'm about to review and negotiate leases with 3 of our commercial leasers. And so all 3 can be different, but then the commercial lease is completely different than our residential lease. I'm getting that right now. So I'm gonna have to do a lot more research to make sure that these leases are up to par and they cover everything.
And do you have a
Yes.
lawyer on hand, Laura, that reviews all of your leases?
So we have a lease administrator. We have one of our founders who founded Investors in 1975. He still reviews every single lease that goes out the door here. And he's great at picking it apart and saying, oh, I don't see plumbing here. And we're like, oh, I got to get the plumbing. We have a variety of recovering attorneys that work here and maybe do brokerage or other things now. And so we lean on them for fancy lawyer language. But then we do have attorneys that we can call and pay for their services when we need it for the tricky ones.
Awesome. Laura, do you mind if I share your contact information if individuals have any more questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Always feel free to reach out.
Awesome. You've been a wealth of information, a complete contrast from residential for sure.
It
And
is.
I think we probably could have done 2 hours just on commercial property management itself because there's so much to it. And Nadra, I think you made the best observation that residential is not directly synonymous with commercial. And people tend to think that and not read the contract because they say, oh, it's probably just the same, and it is clearly not. So it's really important to know the dynamics of the deal and remember that everything in real estate is negotiable. So make sure you speak up for those things. It's just about 4 o'clock. Does anybody have any last minute questions that need to be answered right now. Otherwise, I will send out contact information to hopefully get our guest speakers onto your networks and into your teams for future use. Laura, thank you so much. We appreciate
Oh,
you
you're welcome.
hosting us up today. You have so much information and knowledge, and that's what we need. So,
All right. Well, anytime.
yes. Does anybody have any last minute have to answer questions? If not, I want to be respectful of your time and thank you all for being here. And this wraps up our deep dive on property management.
Have a good evening.
Yes, you too, Laura. Thank you. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions. I'd love to get you connected. Otherwise, have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye.